Hey guys, I'm Mark,
I'm Alon.
and welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Hey listeners, it's Mark and Alon joining you again. Thank you for joining us for another episode of this podcast and for being a part of the community, being a part of the conversation, a part of this movement that we are creating to help fathers lean in and raise up the next generation of men of faith and character. And so we're excited to have you with us, and it's good to put eyes on you again, my friend.
Yes. Good to see you, Mark.
Always.
Oh, man. We did have one episode on the phone.
Yeah.
And then we're back. I feel like we're doing more and more episodes together. This is good.
It is good. I think the chemistry that you and I have is just, let's make it less about you and me and more about the ability to lock eyes with somebody in the midst of a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a better conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
When that happens.
It's like, the way I think about it is when you say it like that, it's like having a business transaction via phone conference versus looking at the person across the table from you and being able to read and whatever and communicate. Verbal is not the only communication that happens.
Absolutely not.
You know what I mean? And so it's good to sit here, talk with you, have some water in front of us, food, and just be two dads talking about like raising up the next generation, and also having everyone join us in the conversation who's listening.
That's right. Absolutely. And the topic that we're going to get into today, we started last week. And so I'm excited to keep going with that. You and I went down that path and got to the end of our time and realized, we haven't walked the rest of the path yet. So we're gonna put that on the table today, which I'm excited about. But before we do that, I just want to remind our listeners that for the next few weeks, we are really in a concerted way seeking your feedback. So we've created a little survey to just solicit your feedback and input so that we can make this show better.
Yeah.
There are 3 different ways that you can find it. You can go to our website and hit the podcast page, and you can take it from there. You can go to our Facebook page at The Next Man Up 1, and you'll find it on the top of our page. You can click the link and take it there, or you can launch it right from the show notes. Here we'll have the URL or the link embedded in the show notes. Either way, it's not 2 minutes. It's like 5 questions.
Yeah,
we're not even asking for personal information here, so you can do it completely anonymous. We're just trying to improve the product that we are delivering, and we know you guys, because we're already receiving it, we know you guys have some good ideas and some good ways for us to help move this forward. And so if you want to jump in, if you're a regular listener and you want to give us your thoughts, that'd be great. If you're a brand new listener and you got some ideas, feel free to help us out too. But we would love your feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. So last time we were talking about this theme of communication, but in the context of restorative practices. And, it was funny because although we weren't physically together, I could just hear your energy and your passion.
Yeah, I'm excited about this stuff.
And you were fired up in a good way. You were fired up. And so like I said a few minutes ago, we got to the end of our time, but we hadn't finished the conversation. And I think the direction that we were headed was really around discipline, because you started to talk about how discipline has taken on a different shape at the charter school that you work with, GEMS, and what that's looked like. And I was hoping with the time today we could move in the direction of, so what does that mean for me as a dad?
Yeah.
I'm listening to this as a dad. I know that discipline is a challenge. And I know how I was disciplined or not as a kid. Maybe me and my spouse or my child's mother are not on the same page with discipline, or it becomes this challenge. But I think, as like we were able to mine out last time, there's some good stuff within the theory and not theory, within the philosophy of restorative practices that is directly applicable to what goes on at home.
Absolutely.
So, if you will, just give us a starting point around what that is meant at GEMS, and then we can transition to how me, not me, Mark, but me as that general dad can, and I guess it applies to me, Mark, too, but how we can apply it at home.
Sure. I think for me, to help me understand more of where like what restorative practices is doing when it comes to discipline, I had to understand like what is the meaning of discipline, like what is the picture that comes to my mind when I think of discipline, and then honestly for me I had to change it. Discipline for me meant something bad. Discipline for me meant you were being punished.
Okay.
And so, if you want to go back, those who are new to us, and you want to like listen to my story, I think it's like one of the first, like the second episode. You can hear what discipline meant for me, if you want to get a clearer picture. But it wasn't good. It meant punitive. It meant like I was a bad kid, and such. There's a lot of things that were ingrained like in me because of that. And so I had to change my picture of what discipline is because the definition didn't fit. And so discipline is the for layman's terms, it's the training of, it's the molding of, it's the correcting and such. And when you think of those words, those shouldn't be bad words. And so when I think about discipline, I mean, you can cut it back to discipleship, which is the teaching of, right?
Yeah.
And when you cut that back, it's like disciple, you're a student of, And so what do we want our kids to be students of? What do we want our kids to be learning? So
let me stop you there, because I'm imagining that you're not the only one. In fact, I know you're not the only one, because I have this negative emotion reaction to the word discipline too. And I wouldn't, I don't know that I would associate it with, that's not true. I do associate it with being punished, not being developed and trained and made into something better. I just have associated it for me personally and kind of in some of my own philosophy with just being punished for doing wrong.
And it doesn't have to be. Actually, I think it's more healthier to look at discipline as something that's good. Like, it's funny. It's even, I mean, another like, way to say this is take a look, criticism. As soon as you hear the word criticism, like you think of, oh, you don't like me.
Right. You get defensive.
The walls go flying up, right? And it doesn't have, criticism doesn't mean it's bad. I want my friends to give me criticism. I want them to critique me, to tell me, hey, what do you see that's good in me? What do you see that I can work on? Because that helps me get better, And so bringing that back to students, what we said in our school is from one way or less, what do we want to teach our kids? How do we want to develop our students? Like, where do we want them to go? And that starts with norms. So what are the norms of our school, the way that we want to live, and we want to ingrain in them? And then how do we help shape and fashion them towards those norms so that they live those norms out? And
so what's an example of a norm? Put words to that.
So a norm could be, we want to use kind words towards each other.
Okay.
And they're fashioned in a positive way. So it can't be don't talk bad to each other. It's I don't want to tell you what you can't do. I want to tell you what you can do, And so we say we want to use kind words towards each other. We can have hallway norms. We want to keep voice levels to 2. We want to use walking feet. And you know what I mean? So that all of a sudden it's like, well, what does that norm look like? What does that norm sound like? What does that norm feel like? It's like, oh, that's peace. That's positive. It looks like someone being kind towards somebody else. It can sound like calm words going towards somebody else. And so like when you start asking questions like that and you start painting a picture, kids start picking off things by themselves just by saying, we want to use kind words towards each other, right? And so with a norm, when a student doesn't adhere to that norm that we have set in place and said, this is how we are going to have our school culture go, then that's when discipline comes in on the second part. So the first part is like, this is the way we're going to go. So this is how we're going to fashion you.
So defining the values, defining the behaviors, defining the attitudes, the things about how you want this, in this case, a school, but even bigger than that, an organization of people, how you want them to be.
Be, right? And guess what? We're humans. And so what do humans do? We tend not to adhere to norms. You know what I mean? And so, of course, we're gonna have kids who don't use kind words towards each other. We're gonna have kids who don't raise their hand or give signals that they would like to share, or there's norms that are just gonna be broken. Because we as humans, we aren't perfect. Now, here's the catch, though, Mark, is when someone does something wrong, we act surprised. Like, we're surprised that you couldn't adhere to this norm that we have set in our school. And what do? We punish it. So it's detention for you. It's a suspension for you. It's a stern talking to. It's like, it's we're going to get your parents in here and we're going to shame you. And then they're going to shame you. And it's like, no, why are we surprised? Matter of fact, we should be waiting for that because it's going to happen because no one's perfect. And so we take discipline a step further and say, when it does happen, when a norm is not adhered to, then let's be ready to help shape you and fashion you. Let's be ready to help correct you. And so we do things like, instead of detention, we say, no, we're just going to have a moment of pause where a teacher writes, we call them CVs, community violations. And so, hey man, you violated the community in this way. You brought harm is what we're trying to say. Like you displaced the atmosphere that we have here. And when you told this kid to screw off, that wasn't kind. And can you tell me what was going on in that moment? Now it's a conversation. Now it's human to human, right? And we allow the student to be able to share what he or she is thinking or was thinking or feeling in that moment. Really. So it wasn't just that you said those words to that person, something triggered that in you. Okay, well, let's help fix that. Let's help give you support in that. Now, after we supported you, you understand that you brought harm. How can you fix this? How can you repair this? And we give the student an opportunity to come up with that themselves. Isn't that better than just going, we will show you how you're going to repair this by us telling you how you're going to repair this? No, let them make the decision. All of a sudden, they start thinking for themselves. They start understanding the world that they're in, that it's not just them alone, but they live in this world with billions of other people. But, for the sake of time, let's just go with our school, with the hundreds of other students who are in there. And they're seeing that, oh, wow, you know what? What I do affects people, and what people do affects me. So I can do my part by doing well. And when I don't do well, it's okay. I can make this up. I can repair this, and so we do those, and enough of those happen. We have a bigger pause where we do what we call an ALSUP, an assessment of lagging skills and unresolved problems. I'm blanking on the author, but if you're wondering where I'm getting this from, there's a book called Lost at School. Lost at School. The author is a great guy, and he wrote this book, and basically this ALSUP is the idea of like sitting down with the teachers of this student and going, look, what are some difficulties or some unsolved problems that you see the student having? Not a time to shame, but the idea of like, look, I see he or she is having this issue. Well, specifically, when is this issue happening and who is it happening with? What is happening around it? And let's get down to the nitty-gritty specifics. Not just that Jimmy or Susie can't focus in class, but Jimmy or Susie is having a hard time during second period in math focusing during our do now or our individual work time. That's very specific. And then we bring that unresolved problem to the student and we say, hey, we've noticed that you've had numbers of community violations. So instead of suspending you for a day or having you just sit in a room by yourself and in-school suspension, how about you and I sit down and let's just try to tackle 3 unresolved problems. And you tell me what's going on in these moments, and then we work together to bring a solution. Mm-hmm. And so the student comes up with the solution to those issues because they are the ones who are having the problems. And they're the ones having the issues at specific times with specific people, you know what I mean, like in specific rooms. And all of a sudden, all these things come out. You have students saying, well, of course I have a problem during first period. I'm getting to school. I didn't have a lot of sleep. I didn't eat any food. And I'm sitting next to a friend of mine who me and this other student love to joke around. Oh, there's a lot of issues going on in that one unresolved problem. Let's tackle them. How about we sit you next to somebody who will help you keep yourself focused that day? How about we have a conversation, us and your parents, we could talk and say, hey, it seems like so-and-so is not getting to bed on time and not getting any sleep. Are you aware of this? Can you work to have him or her like go to bed a little earlier? Oh, you're not getting breakfast because you don't have enough time in the morning? Well, we have school breakfast here. Can we get you something to eat here? All of a sudden, all these, you know what I mean? And then the student starts turning around because someone had the notion to go, discipline is not, it doesn't have to be punitive, but discipline could be, let's just support you to help correct what's going wrong and solve this unsolved problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then, you know, you have enough times where we're pausing with you like 3 or 4 times in a month. Maybe people would think, let's just suspend the kid now. And it's like, no, let's not do that. Maybe we just have a kid who just doesn't care and is harming the community over and over, left and right. We developed something this year called the Reset Room, where we'll take a kid in middle school out of community, have us sit down and go, hey, you know what? All the pauses of conversations, all of the problem solving that we're doing with you, it just seems that you're not putting forth any effort. And you're just in a place where you're not caring. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to need you to start caring. So we're going to remove you from your community, 8th grader, 7th grader, 6th grader, 5th grader, and we're going to place you in a room with 1st graders, 2nd graders, or 3rd graders, or 4th graders. And we're going to have you sit in the back of the room, and you're going to do your work there. And periodically throughout the day, an adult is going to come and have a conversation with you to ask you if you can see like what's going on with you. And can you tell us so we can support you? Because we're exhausting things on our end, but something needs to come forward from you. Oh, and by the way, as you're sitting here, these 1st graders might look at you and go, why are you here? You know, and well, I'm having a problem running down a hallway. This happens, by the way. And a 1st grader might say something like, oh, well, you know what? If you just use walking feet, maybe you'll be okay. Now you're getting wisdom from a 1st grader, which should help you see like,
humbling.
Oh, wow. Like, this shouldn't be that hard. Like, you know what I mean? And so we've had kids like sit in a reset room, and I've come down a couple of times a day and just try to help them work out their problems. Like, look, these are the certain problems you're having, and we keep coming back to them, but you're not putting forth effort. I need to know from you, like, how you're going to change this. And then until that student decides to like put his or her like feet of hands to the plow, like they may not go anywhere, but then they come back, you know, and they might go, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm old enough to be able to be in community and rock and roll. Here's my issues that I'm going with, and here's my way that I'm going to make it right. I'm going to write an apology letter to every teacher that I've been like mouthing off to and been disrespectful to. Oh, really? What else can you do? Well, you know what? I was running down the hallway, knocking over people, and I heard somebody. I need not only apologize to them, but you know what? I might just decide for the week that I'm going to be the janitor of that hallway, and I'm going to clean up the hallways. I might be the hall monitor, and I might say, hey, every kid that I see running through the hallway bumping into people, I'm going to be the one that comes and just gives them a little pamphlet and says, hey, you might want to read this. And it might say something like, please walk nicely. Other people are walking. I mean, there's so much that can come out of it, but it's all like not punitive and more, can we make a correction with your help for yourself? And then as you make that correction, are you starting to head towards the star that we painted in the sky for you to help you grow up into society, in this community, to be a better person, you know? And so I know that's a long way about telling it, but.
So I know you've been talking about it in the school context. Yeah. I'm listening now from the ears of a dad and be like, oh, okay, I don't have hallways at home per se. And maybe I don't have a pull-out room or something like that. But from a philosophical standpoint, here's kind of what I heard to make it more applicable for a dad, right? And stuff going on at home. I've always, thanks to my lovely and sage bride, I've always had this perspective of giving kids choices.
Yeah.
And the choices have consequences. But what I heard in what you were talking about is the consequences aren't just negative. If you do this, you lose that. Yeah. There are still consequences of the choices. But the consequences are built around, here's how we're going to help you to make a better choice next time.
Yes.
Not just you lost your phone, you lost video games, you're grounded for that behavior. The consequence is, you're not quite sure what our core values as an organization, as a family are.
Or you've forgotten.
So let's take a little extra effort to remind you of what those community values are, those norms. And the other thing that I hear and that I really, really like is you're going to take some responsibility for behavioral change. We're not just going to mandate that you go to detention or you're grounded for 2 weeks. What do you think is an appropriate response given the norm that was broken, and not necessarily in a negative way, but causes you at the same time to still own it?
Own it.
Right?
Exactly.
And you're contributing to that own it. Like, okay, well, maybe I'll just take my dish from the table to the kitchen. Well, your grievance was a little bit more than that.
Oh, yeah.
How about I suggest you do the dishes for everybody this time, right? Like it becomes this conversation, but the child, the kid has some say in it. And they own it.
They own it. Take responsibility. Yep. Isn't that part of like what we want our kids to do?
Well, back to the whole definition of discipline.
Exactly.
Discipline is growing and stretching and leaning more into desired behaviors, which you've identified as norms, which I also hear as a family, what are our norms? What are our values? What are our community standards, if you will, right? It's like paint the target, not unlike what we talk about in terms of reaching toward manhood.
Yes.
This is how we're defining manhood. This is also how we're defining our family norms and the things that are important to us.
Which means that we as parents, if we run down this like track, we as parents have to take time to think, to come up with. In other words, we have to be intentional.
Yep. That's the other thing that I heard as well. I'm glad you brought that out.
And that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of effort.
It does. It's harder. It's not
harder.
It's
is.
easier to just say, "Give me your phone and go to your room."
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't. And isn't that what we normally like our society teaches anyway? It's just punitive punishment, and it's not gone well. Maybe it's worked. But how about if there was a different way?
Yeah, exactly.
And a healthier
it is
way.
A way, but what if there's a better way?
A better way to do it, you know? And so like I've taken this model and I brought it into my home.
Yeah.
I have. We sat down and as a family and we said, what do we want to be about? How do we want to live? Like, what are we aiming for as a family? And it's interesting. Dads, pay attention to this. Not pay attention like I'm a teacher or something, but hear me out on this, dads, please. Like, you don't have to be the only one coming up with things in your house.
Say that again.
You don't have to be the only one coming up with things in your house. Like, you have other brains, and God has blessed you with other people to have community with, which is what this whole thing is about, right? It's building community.
Yep.
So, like, your wife, your kids, like, the things that came out of my wife and my kids' mouths, like, astounded me. Like, really? You think we can be about that? Like, you want that to be our norm? And I'm in my head, I'm going, I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah.
And so giving the family an opportunity to help point the path that you want your family to go in, open up the door.
So it's buy-in on the front end.
Yes.
And then allowing the child, in this case, to help to choose their restorative course of action on the back end, just all as part of this positive philosophy around discipline.
Which means when it comes time to take a conversational step of discipline, like to sit down and talk about something, it's not hard. One of my problems that I've had as a dad is that I just go, I just don't want to have this conversation because I know what needs to happen. I know what has to go down, but I just feel my kid just doesn't feel me right now. They're not going to understand. They have a different mindset and different process. And it's like, no, we sat down together and came up with these norms. They have buy-in.
Yep.
So when I say, hey, like you're bringing harm to our family when you're not adhering to this norm. Remember the norm that we came up with? Yeah, that's right. That's right, Dad.
Yeah.
I messed up. Here's how I can fix this.
Yeah.
It's easier.
It is.
It's a lot easier.
It's funny because it doesn't feel easier on the front end.
No.
It feels harder, like it's going to require more. And even as we're talking about this, I'm anticipating the questions that might come, like, that's fine for a school, but my kids just need to obey me at home. And we talked a little bit about that last time, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you going for obedience or are you going for a relationship in the heart?
Yeah.
Because if you're going for obedience, you may not get the other. But if you're going for the heart and the relationship, you're more likely to get obedience. But it requires more of us.
It does. But how about if we all like went around about family this way? What kind of children we would produce to not take their rightful place in society? That when you and I close our eyes and exhale for the last time, we know that this earth is left in some capable hands who are able to think through stuff and do the hard thing.
Yep.
Own the world you live in. Take your responsibility for your actions and your words in this world. I mean, it blows my mind in that. And it's hard, though, because, look, I'm having issues with my kids. I got my kids aren't perfect. They mess up, they jack up just like I did. You know what I mean? When I was a kid, but I turned out all right. But I'm thinking they're gonna turn out better because we're taking some time to be very intentional. Mine might have happen on accident, so to speak. Some people could say that and look at it as an accident, but. I don't believe so. I think there was people who were intentional, but I'm saying I'm looking at my kids going, I want you to be even more intentional, like in how you live and how you press out this life.
Yep.
And I want you to take your place in society and be able to do the hard thing, to take responsibility, but also help this world flourish from your point You know what I mean? And that can happen more if I teach you this way.
So I think what I hear, what I take away is that we, as dads, we can take some leadership at home in crafting our norms. Mm-hmm. We can shift our perspective on discipline away from just the punitive, and more toward the positive corrective of behavior, rather than just punishing bad behavior.
Sure.
Let's correct and redirect toward good behavior, and give some kids buy-in earlier in the process.
Yes.
Help them, not help them, but let them help craft some of those norms and values, and let them help determine some of the restorative action, the consequences for breaking some of those values. And if it works right, quote unquote, then it takes some of the pressure off of the parent. The dad doesn't have to come up with all of the ideas, right? Like it's facilitating this group discussion and direction and all of that, things that we might do in a different context, whether it's organizational culture building, school culture building. We're doing it at home.
Yeah.
And we're doing it with kids that are young and old, kids under. That's what I'm kind of taking away from here.
That's good, man. Exactly.
So I guess dads, here's the question. What are you taking away? It's one thing for Alana and I to kind of banter back and forth, but one of the very short questions I'm fond of asking is, so what? You've just spent 30 minutes with us. So what do you take away? What do you do? What are you going to do differently in your home, in particular with respect to discipline and the conversation we've had, so that you can be better and you can grow? So what does that look like for you at home?
I think it might be good to have dads, if you're going to jump into this, it might be good to talk with your spouse and have this conversation. Like, what does discipline look like? What did discipline look like for you, and what did it look like for me growing up? And then what do we want it to look like?
Especially for parents that are beginning the process of raising kids, because some of that will probably come out naturally as you go down different paths. But yes, have the conversation.
And even if you got kids who are teenagers, like, still, like, this is never too late.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I guess you can't be punishing them, but if you're aiming the way that we're talking, I'm thinking it's never too late, because it's always about forming and correcting. Guess what? I'm 42 years old and I'm still being formed and corrected.
And your dad is influencing some of that, just in a different way, right?
Just in a different way, you know? So I think looking, like, having that kind of a conversation with your spouse might be good, and then, like, maybe having a conversation with the whole family. Like, what are we aiming for as a family? How do we want to live? What do we want to be known for? Like, you know what I mean? And what are the norms of our house, basically? And craft. It doesn't have to be like, a 30-page document, but maybe it's just like 5 to 10 things, you know what I mean? 5 to 10 norms that kind of really define how you want your family to live.
This is what it looks like when we're doing it right. And these are the things that we're going to do when we're not doing it right, to get back on track. I've heard some people refer to it as a covenant. Like a social covenant or a family covenent.
An agreement, like however you want to do it. I like the word norm because it's, I don't know, it just seems more organic. Like it's more, this is our normal. And it doesn't, and then that means that whatever it is your normal that you can, like, step towards. And it doesn't have to be fashioned after some other family. I know growing up, I watched the Cosbys and I thought, man, I want my household to be like the Cosbys. It's like, the Cosbys weren't perfect, though.
No.
They had their issues. And guess what? That was the Cosbys. What about the Augustes?
Right.
Like, what's our normal that we want to be after and about? So that's, and you could check out Lost at School. That was a great one. I know it talks about school, but it's really interesting that a lot of things were related to home. And also, there is restorative practice handbook, and also restorative practices like Circle, Circles. Those two books really helped me out when thinking about family and how I wanted to like really have my family like live. I guess they help give me some tools, not really teach me how my family should live, but more like gave me some tools that I can
absolutely
use.
I'll make sure that those get captured in the show notes so that people can refer to them. This was good, man.
Yeah, man. Great stuff.
I appreciate you bringing your insight as always and sharing some of this training, because even now I'm thinking about ways that I can show up different at home. So it's good.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I hope it's helpful to the listeners.
And listeners, if you've made it this far, just one more plug for the survey. Let us know how to make this better. Sort of like what we've been saying, Mark and Alon don't have it all figured out.
No way.
So feel free to contribute and bring the whole listening experience in this community to a better place as a result of your input. Website, Facebook page, or in the show notes. We would certainly love your feedback. All right, dude. It's been good.
Been great.
Until next time.
Adios.
Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.